That's a good idea. Let's record that. um, now I'm like, how do I start this? Oh, I didn't plan on that. Let's start with, you know what? Let's start with,
If you
I'm
want
sorry.
me to bring up a topic, I can start it off if you like.
Sure, that'd be great.
Well, I think for musicians and for well, not just musicians, but for any occupation, any anything you do in life, you got to practice. And I think that may be the number one thing we gotta we gotta consider. I think for once again for anyone, you've got to have at least some time in your life where you really dedicate a lot of time to practicing. And for me, maybe the magic number was something like 4 hours a day, you know, because the first hour is just a warm up, and the second hour you're just touching the touching the surface, touching the surface. And not that you need to do 4 hours a day for your whole life, but at least there has to be, when you're a teenager, when you're a university student, at some point in your life, you got to spend a couple of years where you're really working very hard at practicing your craft and mastering your craft. Um, and for me, that was, pretty much when I was a teenager. And of course, when I got to university, I also practiced quite a quite a bit. And I tell you a little incident. Uh, I used to host I used to host concerts at Dominguez Hills. I was able to bring in artists to perform recitals pretty much, almost weekly or every other week at least. And we had a pianist one time who came and played a Hinastera sonata or something, and it was fiendishly difficult. And after the concert, we had a little social where we put out some cookies and students got to meet the artist. And I asked her, God, how did you learn that piece? It's so difficult. How much time did you take to learn that piece? And she said, oh, about 3 weeks. And I said, 3 weeks? How much do you practice? And she said, 8 hours a day. That's what it takes for her. Now, I know university and college students don't have that much time, especially if they have to work their way through school and take a number of classes. But I think you have to find some time in your life when you're really going to devote yourself to your craft and give it as much time as you can. And by the way, I think any of the presenters or anybody, feel free to just jump in if you have something to say about a particular topic. I know Deborah probably has something to say about this too. Yes.
I definitely have something to say about the practicing aspect. Because I mean, when I was in my baseline practice was 4 hours a day, and I took a lot of classes. And I
Let's
was
be a little louder, Deborah. I can't hear you as loud. Come in a little closer.
okay. Is this better? Is this better?
Mhm.
Because my thing is turned up all the way. So
Yes, you sound great.
okay. I was just saying that when I was in school, that my baseline was 4 hours a day, and when I was getting my master's, I worked and I had a performance a week because one way I paid for my schooling was to do concerts with fellow musicians, like they needed accompanists and so on. So I was working like a fiend. I wouldn't necessarily wish it on anyone, but I think that it's important to organize your time. There's one thing that you end up doing, which almost all pianists, at least, end up teaching. Luckily, I love to teach, but you have to juggle your time. And so I think you need to give yourself a schedule where you get some really good practicing done early in the day, so you don't give away all of your energy in your teaching, and then you're left late at night and you still haven't gotten your own work done. So I think that having a really keen sense of schedule for yourself and adhering to it is really, really important.
Joanna?
Yes, may I add to that? See, I was a student at Dominguez Hills and piano was my instrument. And while I was there, I was not required to have a senior recital. If you recall, David, that wasn't a requirement. But I chose to have a senior recital because my plan was to go towards a graduate degree, realizing that if I were to apply to a school to be a piano, major, I would need to showcase or have that foundation. So I pushed myself, and Lee Kaplan was my piano teacher at the time. And I did do what David and Deborah have said. I actually sent myself from home to the church where I was a member, and that's where I spent the 4 hours, not at home, because my brothers weren't always so keen with me practicing 4 hours a day. So I made that my goal, and I took a semester actually of just being dedicated after I graduated to practicing so I can do the entrance and the audition for USC. And boy, let me tell you, that made a difference for my future because the piano became my foundation as a conductor. And that's, I think, to have that discipline is going to be helpful in any field that you choose to take or you branch into. And it's been something that I think has affected my decisions in life. Being that committed, that disciplined, it is a trait that can really inspire you to succeed in many ways.
Yeah.
And that kind of to add to that as a corollary is better. Anyway, is that you need to be able to block out distractions. And treat yourself like an athlete. When I was in college, I had a boyfriend who had represented Sweden in the Olympics in decathlon. And I recognized one day that he and I were doing the same thing. We each trained for 4 hours a day. We each kept our health in shape. And we practiced not letting distractions come into our lives. And these things come up. Once I had to do a solo recital 3 days after burying my grandmother. That was really tough to concentrate. Another time I had to do a concerto on a Friday night and I was in bed all day Wednesday and Thursday, and Friday I got up, put on my dress and my makeup and went back to bed until Monday because I was really ill. But you have to, learn, as Joanna was talking about, the discipline to put each of your problems in a little box on a shelf and concentrate on the business at hand, and try to be ready for things ahead of time so you don't get surprises. Make sure there's always food in the house, always gas in the car, whatever, so that something doesn't mess up the works.
Yeah. I think, along with, practicing a lot, you got to be ready when the opportunity arrives. And I'm always disturbed when people say, oh, you never get a chance in music. Nobody will give you an opportunity. It's hard to get ahead because nobody's paying attention. And I got to refute that. I've had a lot of opportunities in music. And if I didn't get ahead in a particular field, it was because I really was not ready at that point. When I came to Los Angeles, from New York City, one of the first things I got an opportunity to do was to play some recital for Michael Tilson Thomas, who at that time was a young, conductor. He was like 18 years old or 19 years old, a kid, but he was doing this Stravinsky octet, and here I was trying to play this thing that I never played before, and I must admit I didn't do a good job. If I were ready for that, I probably could have had lots of other opportunities following that. And along with this thought, well, I can give you another example. In New York, I had a chance to play an Aaron Copland piece for a conductor. And again, I just wasn't doing it very well. And he went on to become a famous conductor. He could have taken me along for some great jobs afterwards. But on the other hand, when I first got to New York, I had a friend who was playing at Radio City Music Hall. And he said, they need subs in the orchestra from time to time. I'm going to put your name in to be a sub in the orchestra. And I said, great, And so I did get a call from the contractor of Radio City Music Hall, which at that time used to show movies all day, 4 times a day, but they had live shows 4 times a day with a kind of a scaled down symphony orchestra, about 40 musicians. And of course, you've all heard of the Rockettes, the dancers, and they would have a variety show going on. So it was a good New York job. And I'm kind of new in New York. I get a chance now to sub in the trumpet section of Radio City Music Hall. So I know the date that I'm going to go in. So the day before, I go to Radio City Music Hall and I buy a ticket to get in for the 12 o'clock show. They start with the orchestra rises out of the pit, and I'm sitting about in the 3rd row behind the trumpet section. And I listen to what they're playing. I'm almost looking over their shoulders. And I watched the movie. I remember what the movie was. It was Breakfast at Tiffany's. Then the movie comes on, I have a little snack at the bar. There's a 3 o'clock show. I watched the show again. I'm sitting behind the trumpet section. Oh, yeah, okay, that's what they're doing. I watch Breakfast at Tiffany's again. There's a 6 o'clock show. I watch the orchestra again. I watch the movie again. There's a 9 o'clock show. I watched all 4 shows. The next morning, the call is for the 12 o'clock show, but I get there 9 o'clock in the morning. And I sneak into the orchestra pit. And I look, and I sit where the 4th trumpet sits. And I look at the music and I kind of finger it, quietly and everything like this. And, by 11:30, other musicians are coming in. They have special jackets. I get fitted for a jacket. Now I sit down, I play the 12 o'clock show, and I nailed it. I played it perfectly. So immediately, I got a reputation in New York as becoming a great sight reader. Everybody said, this guy can come in and just play that show on sight. So I was prepared. So if you know that you're going to do something, suppose you're going to have to play a Bach cantata somewhere or sing in the Bach cantata. Go to the library, check out the music, and really work on it ahead of time so that when it comes time to do it, you're ready for it. You're not learning it at the last minute, but you're prepared.
May I add something too?
Sure, please.
I know we're talking about you practicing your instrument and really developing your skills, but I want you to also focus on the other courses that you're taking and excel in them as well, whether it's theory or history or any of your GEs. And let me tell you what has saved me. When I actually spent those 4 hours for my audition at USC, I got so ill for a month, they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And I was to audition in January. So through the month of November, half of November through half of December, I was barely practicing. But I had visited one of the professors from USC because my piano teacher, Lee Kaplan, sent me to his home in Palos Verdes. She said, I have this student who's going to audition at USC. Let her play for you at your home. That was Beethoven's concerto in C minor. So I played the first movement for him. He said, I look forward to seeing you at the audition, gave me some pointers. So here comes the audition. I have a temperature of 102. My brother had to drive me. I sit there and I play, but I don't play very well. And here is that person that I auditioned. He's on the panel. He said, Joanna, remember how you did that at my home? Can you do it again like that? He was trying to encourage me that I've heard you could do this. But with 102, I couldn't control all my reactions and my skills had gotten to be really poor. So I got the rejection letter. No, you're not accepted into the piano program at USC. I was devastated. So I went by the registrar just to pick up a few ideas of, what else is there. And when that registrar looked at me, he said, "Have you considered going to the music history department?" I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I'm going to send you to Dr. Sims. Go up there, show him your grades, show him all your papers that had A's on them, and let's see what he says." That's what I did. I went upstairs, I walked in, and I showed him all that I had done. I had been a very good student in all the courses, and David will affirm that. And he just looked at my grades and my papers, and he just stamped that application, said, "Welcome to the music history department. What you can do is be a music history department with piano emphasis, and you go study with Dr. Ward." I said, "I'm in USC. I don't care how I got in. I'm just going to do this." And let me tell you, that's what I did the first semester, but I had to take a conducting class as a required class. In that first week, that professor, Dr. Wilson, looked at me and said, "Why are you doing a piano emphasis? You should be a conducting major. You have a natural talent." Let me tell you, a semester after that, I applied by taking courses they allowed me. And then I said, "I don't have experience. I'm 21 years old. I don't know, I cannot really fit the bill." They said, "Well, we're going to let you take the courses, and then we will decide if your talent outweighs the experience." And that's what happened. 5 years later, I finished a doctorate in conducting. So it was really the door into USC to have all my other courses very well prepared, excellent papers. So the experience has to be complete. And I'm going to encourage you not to say, "Oh, I'll just practice my instrument and let the other courses be, mediocre." That's my personal recommendation.
I agree with both of you, the things you've said. One thing about education, frankly, if you're not a well-educated person in art and history and things like that, I don't think you're going to be as good a musician, because so many things flow from those other that other knowledge. And as far as being prepared, you never know where that great gig is going to come from. You don't know who has heard you or what. And so, for instance, I would recommend people keep a bunch of repertoire ready to go. I was glad I had that habit it was in the 90s at some point. But anyway, out of the blue, I got a call from a cruise line, and they wanted me to do concerts on a cruise from British Columbia over to Russia and Korea and Japan. And I was supposed to leave 6 days later. Oops. And it was great, though. They paid me great. I didn't have to pay for anything. I had a cabin. It was wonderful. I only had to do one concert a week, and the longest one was 45 minutes. But I had to crank out that repertoire. And luckily, I had a bunch of it ready to go. So.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt necessarily, but I do want to say two things. One, we've heard from the three of you a lot, and we have Carlos here as well, who's also graduating and talking. So I kind of want to hear from his perspective of being somebody that has only just graduated, but is still technically a little ahead of us students. What he's going through and his challenges of not just his schoolwork and all that, work life and all that, but also your 2 cents on some of the topics that everybody else touched. And while he's talking about that, if anybody has any questions, if you can drop them in the chat so that I can moderate them and ask the panel, that'd be great. Thank you so much. But Carlos.
Yeah, thank you so much. I didn't want to interrupt the three of them because obviously they have a lot of experience than I do and a lot to share. And this is all stuff that I'm still personally learning, especially since I just graduated and I'm still trying to enrich myself with a lot of, like the arts and getting into the actual like history of stuff. And, I'm still kind of figuring myself out. But a lot of what they say, I feel like it's what I'm actively trying to do as well, making time to actively pursue the things that I want to do and I want to be as a musician. And like David Champion said, you really do have to carve a certain kind of schedule of time for you to really commit to yourself as a musician. And you know, it does involve having to put certain things to the side. Like for example, I also enjoy doing like songwriting and a little bit of composing and arranging, but because I want to be at a certain place with my guitar playing, I have to put that to the side a little bit and really commit to just really shedding on my instrument and having put other things on hold for a while. But that's the sacrifice I have to make in order to get myself at a place that I really want to be as a guitar player and as a musician. And it involves just planning things out and being almost selfish with your time. You know, like you have to put like certain things like hanging out with friends or doing recreational stuff like watching movies or other things to the side as well, because you know it's one of those things where it's like, do you want to be a musician who can play their instrument and also do other things on the side, but or do you want to be a musician who really has put in the time, put in the commitment, put in the, you know, blood, sweat, and tears and what you do, so you can really communicate what it is you want to say on your instrument. And I feel like that's something I'm still trying to do as well. And and the other three said also mentioned things about being very well at music theory, being very you know, very well learned with music history as well. And I advocate for that as well, because you need understanding the context of the kind of music that you're playing, whether it be classical music or jazz music or blues music or rock music. Knowing where that music came from and the history behind it, and getting to know how maybe that music also influenced other mediums such as art or books or notable figures, that will only enrich your playing even more. And it'll communicate the message that you want to bring to that music even more by knowing these other facets of knowledge rather than just knowing the music itself. You know, and like for example, I had to do a play last year with the Dominguez Hills Theater Department, and it was for Black History Month, and it involved around the Delta blues music, which was around 1930s, 1940s, 1950s blues music. So it had to do with people like Buddy Guy and Otis Rush and Muddy Waters. And even though I've played blues before and I come from a jazz education, jazz background in school, I didn't know too much about that stuff. So I had to really buckle down and learn about that stuff, understand where the history of, you know, the blues music, knowing that it came from like gospel music and you know, people who were, you know, enslaved, and that music came from a place of pain and suffering. And I had to understand that, and I had to respect that. I couldn't neglect that. Otherwise it would just come off as insensitive and like, you know, what are you doing? And I had to, you know, transcribe and listen to a lot of, you know, these artists, you know, Muddy Waters and Otis Rush and Buddy Guy and Howlin' Wolf. And I really had to get into the music and understand the culture of that music and understand the history of that music, so that once I got up and started playing, it would be well informed, and the music will be enriched by that knowledge. And it I think that just makes you a much more well-rounded person as well as a musician. And that's just been my experience with being a performer, and someone had to do like session gigs as well, where I had to know my stuff, not only about the music but everything around it, like the periphery of the music, so like the history and the context and the actual composer or artist themselves and stuff like that. So uh yeah, that's what, as far as like what we're talking about now, that's what has been my experience so far.
Gotcha. Thanks. Alexis, you wanted to say something? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to backtrack for more Carlos was talking about, really agreeing to like all the classes that they make us take at universities as a performer. These classes like music history, the reason why they make us learn this over and over is because the history from the music that we perform, when we let's say for singing, for me for example, I have to know what the composer was talking about when when they wrote these lyrics or why they chose these melodies. And for Carlos, I really so lucky and blessed to like have met Carlos because he's such a talented musician and a kind friend. So dedicated and so committed to his practice. And not only seeing that, but like the way his classes, his grades were in music history, he was always like the top. And in other classes like musicianship, he was always the best at like sight singing. And I was like, wow, that's so inspirational. I gotta step my game up. I'm not just a singer. I gotta practice piano. I gotta get work good at musicianship. So definitely
Thank
agree
you.
on what Carlos and everybody else is saying.
Thank you so much. Those are very kind words. I appreciate them.
Before we leave the subject of being prepared, I'd like to bring Mary Au in on this if she's still on with us. I don't see her, but first time I met Mary Au is when I was music advisor for the Mu Phi Epsilon International Convention. I think it was in Jacksonville, and maybe not 2003, maybe no later than that. But I needed an accompanist to be available during the convention, and she was recommended, and I met her, and I was very impressed with how conscientious she was in preparing to accompany each of the performers at the convention. Mary, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
You want to say something about preparation?
Yes. I was on a phone call earlier with a student. I told her, if you want something bad enough, and if you keep saying yes to going to work, and you know that you won't practice, therefore you are not going to pass any of your classes. If you really, really want to pass the class, then you have to use your time and decide what's important to you. So for the convention, like you all talked about practicing, I find that when I practice right before I go to bed, I retain it much more. And I also try to practice not everything up to tempo. I learn everything really carefully so that I don't make a mistake right from the start. Because if I make a mistake, it takes me a split second to make a mistake. It takes me a long time to undo the mistake. And yeah, everything that you guys talk about practicing and being prepared is very, very important. It really is. And sometimes I practice with people on the phone. I just tell them sing, and I move my fingers while I'm hearing what they're doing.
Joanna wants to say something about that, being
Yeah,
prepared.
I actually, now my instrument is conducting other people. So I'm at the mercy of my singers and instrumentalists. So my plan has always been to drill and really prepare them and have them ready, especially when it is a mass chorus with other choirs from other, organizations. I wanted always my singers to be more than prepared. And I think Jamie, Alex, Lorna will tell you that has been the case in many of our, combined major performances. I did that with Carnegie Hall. I take my choir to sing under John Rutter and other famous conductors. And one of those sessions, my choir was the most well prepared. They made me take the rest of the groups and do, a sectional with them. And they're seeing that continually preparing people to be at the best they can be. Well, in 2005, I was just joking and I said, when do I get to conduct at Carnegie Hall? Well, they had seen my hard work and preparation and excellence. They said, we would love to have you come conduct. And that opened this dream of me doing this job. And let me tell you, every time I go for any position or any job or any class, I am going to give 150% because this is actually my motto. And Jamie and Alex and Lorna and others who've known me, life is a performance and not a rehearsal. We have to give it our all now today and not wait till tomorrow, no matter what the circumstances are, because you all know the phrase, when preparation meets opportunity, you're in the right place. So keep that in mind today. Give it your all. We perform today.
I like that. I like that. Carlos, I'm sorry. I know you want to say something, but
Carlos?
I also don't want to run out of time. So I want to ask a new question for everybody, and that is because we've been talking about our experiences as practicing and being in school and all of that for performing, but I want to flip the script to what's it like being a teacher, because I'm sure to some degree or another everybody here is taught. So if you don't mind, I'd like Carlos to start, and we'll go around from there. We do only have about 13 minutes though, so just keep that in mind.
Okay, I'll do my best to keep it brief. So I've been teaching privately guitar, bass, piano for about a year now. It's still something I'm still trying to learn, doing my best to really accommodate to my students, because I always try my best to have the students' best interest rather than push them in a specific direction that maybe they won't take to, and God forbid they'll stop playing music or pick up something else, right? So I feel like it's always been my job to try to enlighten them as not only musicians but as people, because you go to lessons to not only learn about your instrument but learn about kind of you learn about yourself as well, learn about what you're capable of, rather than think that there's this huge gap between yourself and where it is you actually want to be. Rather, I'm trying to be the bridge between where they are and where they would like to be. And I don't feel like it's my job to say, hey, this is the direction you should be going. I feel like I'm more there to guide them rather than to prescribe them with something that maybe they won't take to. And that's been something that I feel like that's been working out for me as a general thing as a teacher. And like I said, I'm still very much learning, very much a student in that as well. And that's just been what I've been trying to do as a teacher.
I saw that Julio was on for a moment ago. He's a teacher. Can he say something about teaching? Or are you there, Julio?
Yeah, I'm here. You guys are getting me at the end of our lunch break right before we go into advisory. But public school teaching is a beast on into itself. And the best advice that I got when I was an undergrad and when I got into my first classroom was, they didn't hire you to teach music. They hired you to teach students, to mold minds. You're just using music as your vehicle. And to me, that was kind of like, whoa, that doesn't make sense. But what I got from that was that if you guys, and you're passionate about music and you're going to want to go and teach, but if you go in with the mentality that you're going to prepare students to go and play for the LA Phil, the LA Opera, you're going to be very unhappy, because not everyone shares the same passion that you do. But if you come to terms and you accept that, you know what, they hired me to teach students, to mold minds through music. And eventually you're going to get one or two that are going to make it. I just found out over the last month or so that one of my middle school students, who's now a college student, he's actually majoring in music technology. And he's doing a pretty good thing. Actually, he dropped out of school because his music gig is starting to pick up more and more and more. I'm not saying drop out of school, but he had a plan where music technology was the thing. So he actually produces his own music, and he goes up and down California a lot touring. So that was one of those kids that, 1 in 100 kids that said, you know what, I'm going to do this as my major. But it's very rewarding, but it's also very tiring. And it's a roller coaster where you're going to feel exhausted, but you're going to feel accomplished. And if you walk out of the day feeling accomplished and exhausted, you did it right. If you walk out exhausted, you're probably not going to last very long. And that's all I have to say about that before I go to my next class. And by the way, I am in school. I just wanted to share this, guys. We are set up just in case if we have after school practice.
Beautiful job, Julio. Beautiful. Well, you also need to, what I tell my students, I am more than certain that what you're learning in college, in the university, wherever you are continuing your education, you're learning life lessons, work ethics, and realizing that these are all going to apply to your life as you go through this journey as a musician. But I have always chosen to inspire my students with my life, not only with what I'm teaching them, not just the discipline, but model what it takes to be someone who has a passion for what they do.
Okay. Well, we have a few minutes left. Let me take it maybe in another direction back for performers. If you want to be successful in the music business, first of all, you got to be available. And you got to let people know that you're available and that you're looking for work and that you want to help them. Again, I'll tell a story. When I first got to New York City from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, it was a September. I was strolling around 42nd Street in Midtown Manhattan, and I heard some music coming out of an open window on the second floor. And so I climbed the stairs and I saw a little group rehearsing, and I said, "Hey, can I sit in for a moment?" And they said, "Yeah, okay." They let me play bass, and sure enough, I got my first job playing bass because they met me. So, in order for somebody to hire you, they have to meet you. They have to know that you want a job and that you're available. And along with that, I think you need to accept any kind of job, any kind of opportunity that comes your way. Nothing is beneath you. Nothing is over you. If somebody says, "Hey, will you come down and play some music for?" Yes, I'll be there. No matter what style it is, what kind of music, just join it because you're going to learn something from what you do, even if it's not the kind of music you normally play. Anybody want to add to that kind of topic?
David, you gave me my first job teaching piano at the conservatory that was at the Baptist Church under Cal State Dominguez Hills. Do you remember?
Yes.
I was 19. I'd never taught anyone. And there were those students. One was 5 and one was 65. And I'm sitting there saying, "Oh my goodness, I've got to be creative in how I teach this." That was and then I started driving all over this hill teaching. After I finished a doctorate, I was driving around this hill teaching piano lessons with a doctorate in conducting, but I only had a small church job. I did not have a college job. And I have always believed that exactly those words, not one job is below you. Because you're always going to learn, you're always going to be able to share this gift. And guess what? Music is a free gift that you can give to people anywhere. So don't be shy in sharing it, because you don't know who may be listening to you to give you a job that's worth a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. When I first got out of school with my bachelor's, I was determined to get some work. And I sat down one day in the days of the telephone directories, and I called everything having to do with music. Do you need a teacher? You needed this? Do you needed that? I got 3 jobs in one day. And one of them was that for children's dance lessons, they would come up and whisper to me what they were going to be. I remember one was a mama bird giving flying lessons to the baby birds, and I had to make up music on the spot. I wasn't trained in improvisation or anything, but I really needed that $10 an hour, which was huge at that point. And but I went in with, I thought, okay, I don't know what they're going to throw at me, and I made a graph for myself of pieces that I knew in 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 6/8 at different speeds. And I filled in the boxes with things so that if I couldn't think of something at the spur of the moment, I had that as an inspiration. And I also got a job. I had to make up music for singing and dancing for children's plays. The same thing. just like on the spot. It's amazing when you need that money, what you can figure out to do. And I learned a lot from it too.
Carlos, I saw you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just because now that we're talking about kind of this kind of trial by fire kind of thing, going back to that, the play I did, like I said, I had to like really buckle down and learn about, blues music, because that wasn't my area of study specifically. I was a jazz guitar player, and that was my emphasis. And of course, those two obviously have a relationship with one another, but they're separate for a reason, right? So, and I had to really like know my stuff, and I had to do a lot of research and a lot of just kind of like really like this kind of discovering this area of music that I didn't know about. And in addition to that, I was the music director for the play as well, and I've never directed anything like that before. So I was in charge of getting the repertoire, handing my musicians the repertoire and what I expected from them, and what the director expected from us and me, because I also had to direct the actors as well, as like, hey, this is the music we're playing, this is what I expect you to do. Right. And I've never done that before. And I had to like, kind of go in there trial by fire and kind of figure it out as I'm going, and make sure I don't, screw this whole thing up, because this is way bigger than, you know, than than me. It's a whole production. It's a whole crew, team of people, directors, actors, stage managers, and costume designers, and all this stuff. It's just like, wow, I really have to do my part. Otherwise, it's really just gonna bottleneck everything. And luckily and luckily after like talking to just communicating with the director just over and over and over again, just asking him like what it is that would you like me to do, because I'm willing to do anything just to make this thing really great. And luckily he gave me some really good pointers on like, hey, this is what I expect from you, you should try doing this kind of stuff. And he's not a musician, but he's a director, so he kind of understands this idea of getting people and to do certain things for him in his vision. And so he gave me a lot of good ideas of like what it means to be a director. And me just actually just doing it, even if I wasn't super experienced in it, I learned a lot about how it is to direct people, and I learned about myself as the kind of person that I can be to other people. And I think that's an opportunities like that, I think more and more people should try doing, even if you have no idea, or rather, even if you've never done it before. I think putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation like that, I think is a great way of learning. Even if you mess up, there's still lots to learn when you try something, and maybe you fall down, but what's important is that you get back up and learn from it.
I don't want to, by the way, I have to apologize for my dog. I've had disasters with the cable today. They cut into my gas line and everything else, and they keep coming back and they weren't supposed to. Anyway, it might sound a little hocus pocus, but I'm just going to mention something. I think that your general mindset can be really important, as far as focusing yourself on something. My case in point is that, let's see, 22 years ago, or more than that, a little more than that, one day I thought, gee, Japan hardly lets any of our imports in, and we let a lot of theirs in. And I thought to myself, I'm going to be the import that gets into Japan. And I just kind of let it go. So you fast forward a number of months, and one of my college students moved back there, and she called me up and she said, I'm going to do a solo recital. I really, really, really want you to be here to help me get ready at the end. I'll pay for your hotel. I'll pay for your airplane. I don't care. I want you to come. I thought, well, I guess I got to go. So I did. And when I was there, she arranged a master class for me to do. And for 22 years, except last year because of COVID, I've been going to Japan once or twice a year to perform, to do master classes, and to coach mostly professional pianists. I mean, it's wonderful for me. I'm completely addicted to that. But it was almost like, they say, put it out to the universe. I'm not sure if I, subscribe to that wording, but it's kind of like that. Because I think in some intangible way, it kind of focuses you on what you want. I have wanderlust. I have my whole life. I wanted to see the world. And this is how I've been able to do it primarily. So.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you, all of you, all four of you, for taking the time to speak. Unfortunately, session one is now completed. So we will have a 10-minute break between the next session if anybody needs to go or anything. And then also to let anybody that had signed up for the second session to come in. That's what this next 10 minutes are. So we can keep talking if anybody wants to keep talking, but we won't officially start for, like I said, 10 more minutes. I forgot to bring my mic down. Hello everyone. So, we're gonna start our second half of this. Hopefully, a few more people will show up while we're doing this, which is totally fine. But I also don't want to, run out of time or anything like that. So I figured let's continue on from earlier. So as a quick recap, we have David Champion here, Dr. Joanna Nachef, we have Carlos Rodriguez, and Deborah Aitken as our panelists. Though Deborah seems to be away from the computer at this second. But anyway, sorry about that. I wanted to ask real quick for everybody to give themselves one more quick little introduction. Not as long as the one from earlier, just something brief if you guys don't mind.
Starting with
Yes, sorry.
former professor of music at Cal State Dominguez Hills, former department chair, Mu Phi Epsilon since they went co-ed back in the 70s or 80s. When it went co-ed and they took men in, I and another faculty member, Marshall Bialowski, made the Dominguez Hills chapter co-ed.
Carlos?
Yeah, so hello everybody, my name is Carlos Rodriguez. I am an alumni from Dominguez Hills, graduated May of 2020, so last year, and I'm just really happy to be here.
Dr. Nachef?
I'm a graduate of Dominguez Hills, 1980. And I actually joined Gamma Sigma because Professor Champion invited me in 1979, and it's been a wonderful journey. I'm a member of the Mu Phi Epsilon PV chapter, and I have served on many levels. I also am the director of choral activities at El Camino College since 1996, and I have taught as part-time adjunct at Dominguez from 1991 through last year, because I taught for the external degree from 93 on, for the music department through 97. So I've been very blessed to have had the chance to come back and teach at the school that I call my alma mater.
And Deborah. Oh, you're muted.
There. I used to teach at El Camino College for many years. I have degrees in piano from USC and Cal State Northridge.
Okay. So, since this is being recorded, I figure let's continue on from where we left off earlier. And this is going to be posted probably on our YouTube channel anyway. So it kind of makes sense to not repeat some of the same stuff and continuing on. So we touched on practicing schedules. We touched on getting jobs. We touched on... oh, I'm sorry. Jamie wants to take a picture real quick. So let's...
Thank you,
let's
Alan.
just
That's
do
my
that.
job here today.
I'm sorry, Jamie.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
All right, so at this point, please, everyone turn on your camera. Oh, Autumn is driving. Okay. Thank you, Autumn. So I'll just count 1, 2, 3, and everyone just smile, okay?
What are we supposed to do?
We're going to take a picture. Take a group picture.
On the computer?
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't know there was a camera on my computer.
I'll do the screenshot, so everyone will be in the picture. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna count 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Do you guys want to do another like triangle? Because since we're all Mu Phi. Yeah. Like okay. So Janelle, you want to tell us how to do the gesture?
Oh, yes, it's just your pointer finger and your thumb, and then you just cross over so that we're kind of connected with triangles.
Yeah.
What are you
Okay.
doing?
So I'll be the only one cannot do it. All right. 1, 2, 3, cheese. Okay, thank you guys.
And let me say, you should send this to the Triangle, the journal, and let them know that you held this workshop and that Gamma Sigma is a very active chapter. Congratulations, Gamma Sigma.
Thank you. Thank
Yes,
you.
I will.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, can I continue then with pretty much where we left off? I want to say that in music, and as in most fields, you have specialists and then you have generalists. Um, if you're a specialist, you say, I'm going to specialize in playing Baroque music. That's all I'm going to do. Well, you better be really great at that. You better have an exceptional talent to be a specialist in a particular field. Where I'm only going to play modern jazz. Okay, that's commendable too. But if you want to make a living in music, and you don't have that exceptional talent and exceptional drive for one particular field, it at least in my case, it was better to be a generalist. My resume says Bach to Rock. So I played in classical symphony orchestras, I played in opera orchestras, I played in brass quintets, I played in jazz groups, I played in rock and roll groups. And even for a while, even when I was teaching at Dominguez Hills, I got a run on jobs playing taps at military funerals. So someone gave me a call to play taps at a music funeral, and I charged, I think it was $150, which is a lot of money in those days. And before you know it, I was getting lots of calls to play taps at funerals. Well, it got to the point where I couldn't handle it anymore. And I'm teaching full time, and I'm playing gigs on weekends too. But there was a guy who did this pretty much for a living. He had army costumes, even back to the Civil War costumes that he would wear, and he would play 2 or 3 of these a week, and make a decent living. But you probably can't make a living just playing taps. You probably should do other kinds of things too. And I found that being a generalist, being able to handle any kind of situation worked for me because it always kept me busy. I always found a different kind of job to play or to take care of. Anybody else want to talk to this topic?
I agree. I think you need to be well versed in all different styles, even if they're all within the classical realm. And then you might become associated with certain things like French music or something that people expect to hear you perform if you do a concert. But yes, I think you need to be flexible, play all different styles. And by the way, I'm going to have to jump off, but this has been great. And
Okay, thank you so much for being here and giving your 2 cents. We really, really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deborah.
Bye, Deborah. Take care.
Yeah.
bye-bye.
Joanna, you want to say anything to
Bye.
that? Because you already kind of hinted that you did a lot of different things.
Carlos wanted to say something.
Carlos.
Yes, so yeah, I definitely agree. If you definitely want to get a lot of work as a musician, you definitely want to be at least familiar with other different types of music that your instrument may also be involved with. Like I think a good rule of thumb that I've always stuck to, that's worked out for me personally, is always say yes to things. Obviously say yes to things within reason. Of course, you really don't want to spread yourself thin. Ask me how I know that. but honestly, saying yes and being open to other things, even if it may not be your cup of tea, is super, super important. And another thing I also want to touch on as well is to see if you can be involved in music in other ways. For example, I'm also a video editor and photo editor as well, and I've gotten gigs where I had to edit people's recitals, undergraduate recitals or graduate recitals for their masters. And even though yes, it isn't like performing, it's still music involved. I had to deal with a lot of people's clips of them playing their stuff, whether it be, singers or piano players or guitar players or horn players, and I had to be the one in charge to put everything together into a cohesive performance, and this, and that this is other types of work that maybe you would want to start doing as well, being a producer and video editor and maybe even an engineer, or at least be capable of recording people and be able to send tracks to other people. Because you'd be surprised how many people want that kind of stuff, where they want videos put together, or they want to lay down tracks for you so they can have a demo or potentially release like an album or a self-produced album. And or for you yourself to have the ability to put stuff together so that you can show other people what you can do. Because sending things over social media or YouTube is so important these days, especially with COVID. We can't meet together to perform with each other, at least not right now, at the time being. But regardless, just knowing your way around editing like videos and knowing your way around audio can get you a lot of work. And if not work, just at least give you opportunities to get work by sending people like videos of yourself playing, videos of other people playing, like, hey, look, I can produce people's stuff. I can be behind a camera for other musicians and film them. And that's other kinds of work that maybe you want to take advantage of. And I'm coming at this idea of doing other things at a different direction, but it's the same philosophy, saying yes to saying yes to things, even if they're not quite exactly what you may want. There's still opportunities, and I guess I want to repeat what David Champion said. Nothing's above you, nothing's below you, and you should be open enough to take on these different kinds of gigs, because they really are rewarding, and you'd be surprised how you can make money even if it isn't exactly what you're prepared for. Because I didn't learn about video editing in school. I had to do it figure it all on my own. But because I took the time and commitment to do it, it allowed me to get other kinds of work.
I think these days, especially, no matter what you do in music or any field, you need to be on top of technology. Everybody needs to be a computer programmer, or at least know how to use computer techniques and audio techniques. Everybody should be able to put their own performance on YouTube or in social media. That's really, really very important these days. I think it's not enough just to practice in the practice room. You need to know everything about technology too. Along with this, maybe we were talking about Mu Phi Epsilon, and that kind of leads me to the idea of networking. You need to have lots of friends, and you got to be friendly to people. Don't make enemies. Be sociable. You got to be sociable. Sometimes we're happy just being by ourselves in the practice room, but you got to be out there dealing with people. Join as many groups as you can. Going back to Mu Phi Epsilon, one of the beauties of Mu Phi Epsilon is that you can probably go to any major city in the country and find some friends. Call up the local Mu Phi Epsilon chapter and say, hey, I'm visiting town. What can I do? Can I meet some of your musicians? And you immediately have some friends. You should, if you're a professional musician, you probably should belong to the musicians union, even though you don't have any prospect of work immediately. But you'll never get a union job unless you belong to the union to start with. The Los Angeles union unfortunately moved to Burbank, but if you could, I'd say join the union and hang around the union social hall. They have practice rooms in there. Listen in on groups. Get to meet the musicians that are working professionally, and before you know it, you may get a real job. This leads to jobs. Socializing is important. Joanna wants to say something.
Well, yes, with Mu Phi, I will tell you, it was because of Mu Phi Epsilon and the PV chapter, and I got the chance to go in and apply at El Camino to do the Joy of Music, where concerts were given and lectures would be given to the people who showed up and they were from the community. And you know, the person who said to me, go in, meet this lady who's in charge, Leslie Back, was Pat Mackey, David. She said, you know, I was teaching in her conservatory, like I told you, a doctorate in conducting, choral and orchestral. And I was sitting there going, quarter, half. No, let's do that again. Teaching all these kids. Well, one day she said, go, there's an opening, meet with her. That was my step into El Camino. It wasn't a course, it was just lectures. But pretty soon, sight singing classes opened up and they said, you know, would you be interested? Music appreciation opened up. Would you be interested? Did you know that I never taught sight singing or music appreciation? A piano class opened up. And I would just throw myself into really learning what it takes to teach all these topics. And I would go to the teachers that were teaching them, sit and visit, ask for their advice. And then, you know, David Champion hired me at, Cal State Dominguez, and he shared with me his paperwork, his tests, his syllabi. If you really have that desire to connect and show respect to those who have walked the path before you, make friends, they would be more than happy to do so. And I ended up paying it forward with colleagues. But while I was at Dominguez, I needed to be employable. I wanted to make sure, because as a part-timer, you're living by the phone at the end of the semester. Do you get a class again? Can you pay the bills? I had a church job, and then I taught these private lessons. And every semester I'm waiting for the call coming. Will you get, you're going to conduct the choir again at Dominguez or teach a voice class at El Camino. Well, while I was there, they needed someone to teach in the humanities field. Do you remember that class, Intro to Humanities, David, that you helped develop? Well, he said, well, Joanna, you should consider this. And you know what? I had to go and sit in on classes where the colleagues of mine were teaching philosophy, art, history, or literature, and music. That was the course. And boy, I spent hours on end viewing videos, writing every word these professors were teaching so I could teach it. And let me tell you, that opened the world of music for me in a different level, because I was seeing now the influences of the humanities coming together. Then all of a sudden, I was teaching an upper division class, The Life of Faust. I created a music seminar on women in music. I sat on a curriculum for developing women's studies. I never said no. On top of all of that, there was a high school that was being developed at Dominguez called California Academy of Math and Science. And they needed someone to teach music, they sent me Sally Etcheto at the time, the professor at Dominguez, said, I just helped them with a little musical thing. Joanna, you should do this. I said yes, and let me tell you, I developed a music program for them with choir and orchestra for 25 years. I had 100 students. The campus was 500 high school students. I had 100 of them in the music department, and they were incredible. I didn't give up that job. When I got my full-time job at El Camino, they all said, now that you're a part-time mindset will go away, you'll focus on one job. Did I do that? No, I did not. I had my full-time job at El Camino, my part-time job at Dominguez, my part-time job at the academy, at the high school, my church job, and a community chorus with a family and 2 kids. But you know what? If you want to pay the bills, sometimes that's what you're going to have to do. And okay, sleep, fine. I will sleep when I'm dead. I'm going to keep doing what I love to do. And I would walk in exhausted, like we mentioned earlier, but I would leave every class and every rehearsal exhilarated. And I got to the point where I could cut back. And that was only 4 years ago. And I never gave up a job till after 25 years. And so finally, I can say, this is what I'd like. I formed my own professional group. I have my own orchestra. I was invited just 2 years ago to be the conductor for the Torrance Pops Orchestra. So now at this age, I'm 62, feeling very blessed. I can then focus on what I want and what I want to just invest my effort and time into. But I have learned never to say no. I paid the price, of course. But you know what? As a musician, when they call us starving musicians, if we are entrepreneurs and if we have that desire to keep doing all that we can every day, I think the bills will be paid and we will be more than rewarded, not financially, but with what we see in the product of the work we do, in the people we inspire, in the legacy that we leave behind.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and never saying no. Be open to all possibilities. Going back to networking. I think even for composers, there's composers organizations that you need to join. You need to meet other composers. You need to meet other songwriters. You should go to concerts to hear other performers, and try to meet them, and do your best to make contacts wherever you go. Mary, are you there? You have anything to say about networking? Mary, are you there? Unmute
Yeah.
yourself.
Yes, I'm here.
Do you want to say something about networking?
I think they should join the Grammy organization
Okay.
as students because it doesn't cost that much. It's probably much easier to join. You just go on the website and fill up the form. Like Carlos just graduated. If he didn't join before, to join now, you have to get 2 recommendations. And as a voting member, you have to have credits for being on music that is for sale. So it's a lot more complicated. I've been trying to get my nephew to join, and it took many months of my chasing before he got into the second letter of recommendation stage. But as a student, it's very fast because I've told a bunch of students, and only one of them took the time to join. And she's now, and after she joined, she told me, Mary, let's go to this meeting. I should actually ask her whether those meetings are still online or not.
Okay.
But they definitely have things like that. And MUFI is great.
Carlos, you seem to enjoy the experience you had with the theater department at Dominguez Hills. There are 1,200 small theaters in Los Angeles. You should contact theaters and say, hey, I'm a musician and composer. If you need some music for your play, think of me. Just let them know you're available. That we said that earlier. You got to let people know you're around, you're available, and you're interested in doing things. You might do some music for a small theater somewhere, and one of the actors suddenly gets famous, or has a big movie deal and needs a composer, and they'll remember you. You made that contact at that point, and you'll know someone and they'll know you. So that goes with all these fields of music. Let people know that you're available, you're interested in working in music, you want to make music your career, you're willing to do anything in the field at this point just to get started. Very important.
And I want to add a little bit about this last year, teaching and learning in the pandemic. What an unprecedented time for us musicians. You know how tough it was to just get that message that campuses are closed and now we got to turn on to our platforms, and for me to teach on Zoom. I have never gone on Canvas. This is what El Camino uses, and then to teach. But let me tell you, I threw myself into this because I believe I have to be, like David said, virtually equipped, and really making our students realize that we got to stay connected. And I realized early on there was no way I could conduct my choirs to sing in sync on Zoom, but I regularly met them as if I walk into my Zoom class to this day as if I'm walking into my classroom, the length of the time. And we have discovered, obviously we can't sing on, but I'd have them silently practicing with me their parts, and we did virtual choirs. I have a brother who's in Hollywood, he's an editor, and so he created for me a virtual choir, 2 or 3 last year. In the fall, we did the Bach cantata, the whole thing, 20 minutes with soloist and choir, and it was our end of the semester. But what we discovered was another platform called Jamulus, where we can use, I'm sure, some of you using that? You have an interface and you have a microphone and a headset. You download that, and El Camino provided a server. This whole semester so far, we're rehearsing on Jamulus. We hear each other and we can rehearse and make harmony in sync. We haven't recorded anything that way yet, but boy, what a wonderful feeling it was when we finally could hear each other. And do you realize how amazing it is to be actually going to be in person? I think I'm going to be sobbing when I see my students and finally can make music in person together. And that's the hope we have. We have to keep trying to really pull through and keep music alive. And I'll tell you, my students have been very grateful that I require them to show up, that I see them, I dress up, I put on my high heels still, Alex, Jamie, and I make sure that I am ready to give them the best I can. And so many have found it that's the best purpose for them to get out of bed. I'll never forget one student. I said, "Can't you turn your camera on?" He said, "Oh, Dr. Nachef, give me a minute. I have to put a shirt on. I'm still in bed." But from bed, he was connecting. And to me, all that these students have suffered in mental health, if we can stay connected this way, it's going to make a difference in their life, and they're going to find a purpose to wake up. So we just have to be constantly growing in technology and teaching ourselves that it's not just the traditional way that we will communicate and teach.
Yeah. Remember that you're constantly learning throughout your life. You're not just learning in college. You will be learning throughout your life, and you have to keep on learning. By the way, you know, I played a season with the Florida Symphony Orchestra after college, and in that 15-week season in Florida, I learned more orchestral music than I did in 6 years of college. You know, you're really going to learn when you get out of college, and you have to do it on a daily basis. And you know, you have to prepare for that next concert. You got to learn that music, and you got to keep learning. I'd like to move maybe to some like basic employee kind of kind of things. You know, if you want to work in music or work in any field, the first thing you got to do is show up on time. Yeah, in fact, in music, it's best, and I would say probably other fields too, it's best if you show up a half hour early.
Bruh.
Yeah. As a professor, I could tell who, from the first day of class, who was going to get the A in the class. The person who showed up before the class started, was sitting in the first row, had all their books, had their notebook open, and listened to what I had to say. I said, "This is the student that's going to get the A." Yeah, I could tell right away. Sometimes on the first day of class, if it was a music major class, I'd have the students introduce each other themselves. And from the way they presented themselves, I could tell already who the successful ones were going to be. No, so show up on time, be prepared for the task at hand, and this goes for any kind of job. And also in any kind of job, there is a maxim that says the customer is always right. And I would extend that to say that whoever pays you is always right. Even if they're wrong, they're right. You got to, when you're playing music in a group and somebody hires you to play in that group, that leader that hired you is the person you've got to please. I know you're playing for an audience and you want to please the audience, but first you got to please the leader. If you're playing in an orchestra or singing in a chorus, you want to please the conductor, because the conductor is the one that's going to invite you back, is going to hire you again. When the conductor goes to give you a cue, you look that conductor in the eyes and say, I'm ready.
Ready.
I'm with you. You got to give that conductor security to know that you're going to play your part correctly. And if you make that conductor feel good, he's going to hire you again. Yeah.
And you know, David, it's crucial. Like you mentioned this earlier. Never burn a bridge, no matter how tough it is. For example, I applied for my position at El Camino in 1991 before David hired me. I was one of the 3 finalists, but they didn't choose me. I did not look at it as, oh my gosh, you know, they don't like me. I actually walked into the dean's office and asked him what I needed to improve so I would have a better chance in the future. He said, you needed a full-time job. I said, well, I have to have someone give me a full-time job. But I continued to work at El Camino as a part-timer. I never showed any disrespect or any unhappiness about the decision they've made. I actually worked with my colleague. He was my classmate whom they chose, brought him to Dominguez. He was my tenor soloist. We collaborated with El Camino. That job opened up again in 96 and never realizing that I would be the one to end up getting it. I feel always that respecting, like David said, the person who is your employer, but also respecting the person in authority. You've placed yourself under their authority. I always remind my students, when you signed up, that's what you actually have done. You've placed yourself under my authority, but I'm here to help you succeed. And always realize that it's better to be a diplomat and an advocate and a caring person and trying to understand and see the situation from someone else's eyes. And be the one to respond, but react in a manner that is pleasant. And sometimes it may be very hard to do so. But I think if we can control our reactions to the unpleasantness that we may sense, that's also maybe showing a trait in us that can be diffusing the situation and helping us keep the peace. Remember, in harmony, you have dissonance and consonance. They coexist. They're needed there. If we had consonant music all the time, it would become boring. That dissonance creates the flavor and the variety. So we need to learn how to coexist and how to learn to work with people that may rub us the wrong way, but learn to really keep the peace and keep the purpose that is bigger than all of us. It's that act of making music and making memories together.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, don't make enemies anywhere. And back to what I was saying, you know, your job is to make the leader, the conductor, your boss look good. You're there to help them. If you're joining a band, you play their style. Listen to what they're doing and play the way they play. And at the same time, maybe don't upstage others. You want to shine yourself, but don't overshadow others. You know what that means, upstage, where an actor gets in front of another actor and tries to be more important in the play. Again, I always have these stories. One time I was on a band with another trumpet player by the name of Bobby Hackett. And this is before your time, but he was a famous cornet player, which is kind of a trumpet player. And he had lots of recordings out with big symphony orchestras as a cornet player. And I got a chance to play a solo, and I played my solo. And on the first break, the leader came over to me and he says, "Don't out Buddy Hackett." I played my solo in Buddy Hackett's style, so I was upstaging him. He said, which is something I should not have done. I shouldn't have tried to make something better than he was doing. You better let the star shine. Your job is to make the star more important. Your job is to make the leader more important, the conductor more important. If you're writing music for a play or for the movie, your job is to satisfy the director. Whatever they want, they're the customer. Even if they're wrong, you can say, I think it might be better this way, but we'll do it your way.
Yeah, and in some of those mass choruses, when I prepare a choir and we go to a conference and someone else is to conduct, I always tell my students, the person standing on that podium is the one we need to respect and follow. Do not raise your hand and say, oh, Dr. Nachef did it this way. That's not what we're there for. We are to submit to the style and the approach that the person on the podium is doing. Whether I agree with it or not, I will follow. Because I think there will be a lot of learning from others. We can learn. Maybe that's not the way to be done, but I don't have to be verbal about it. I gotta be respectful. And that's exactly, I think, where you will find people more pleased to work with you than somebody who's always complaining and always trying to upstage or say, I know better.
Right. So real quick, we have about 10 minutes left, so I want to ask you guys a heavy question. Simply, the question is, what does music mean to you?
Okay. Well, I had another idea about tying this all up. I was going to say that we're put on this earth to help others. And whether we do it through music or through our social contexts, we got to make the world a better place by whatever we do. Life, no matter what they say in certain sports and certain areas, is not necessarily a competition. We don't get ahead by hurting others or holding them back. We get ahead by helping others. And whatever you can do to help others, to make them, to promote their better life is the most important. Music for me has been my life. That's all I have ever done. Teaching music, playing music, experiencing music. That's been very important to me. Yes.
Well,
Jan?
for me, music has been in many ways my middle name. I will tell you that being raised in a household where my mother sang all the time, and I felt very blessed to share in that. But I'm raised in a house filled with faith, and our faith is expressed through music. And when I finally realized that I could actually have an education in music, finish high degrees in music, work in music, and then use music as that bridge to connect cultures, where it matters not where you come from or what you stand for or where you are from, which part of the world. It is that bridge to create brotherhood and harmony and peace. And because of, I think, that gift that I feel God has given me, I've always chosen to bring glory to God through my music. Like Handel and Bach, I know some of you realize they signed off Soli Deo Gloria on their compositions. I have felt I've been given that gift so I can reflect that which God has given me, where I can inspire others, I can be a better person, I can create that connection. I'll tell you what has been most rewarding for me is connecting the Lebanese singers from all ages, bringing them to Los Angeles, bringing them to Carnegie Hall with the Americans. Here I am, born in the Middle East, in Lebanon, but being adopted into America, I was given the chance to become that ambassador of harmony and to bring all these ages from university, children, community singers. They stood together and made harmony and developed friendships. That was music that helped me produce what we can consider the best form of soft diplomacy. Now I've done it in Russia, I've done it in Europe, and it was music that helped me get there. And I feel blessed that God has given me that gift to keep doing it wherever I may be.
Right. That was really beautiful, and I really appreciate the fact that I'm here to hear that for sure from both of you. Um, I mean, that is a very heavy question, Alan, because I'm still very I'm still a student in, in music and in my craft, and even though I've been, listening to music for all my life and been playing guitar for 15 years since I was 8 years old. And I'm sure this answer will change as I get older. But for me, I've always been like selfish with music. Like I've always wanted music to be for me. And even though now I'm a little bit less selfish and I try to share music with other people because I think it's an important art form, I think for now, as far as what music means to me, is to feel something and to convey an emotion, to convey something that can't be, just spoken. It almost kind of follows this kind of musical idea. If something's too emotional, then you sing, and if you want to convey something even more emotional, then you dance. I feel like I feel like that's kind of what music is for me. It's like you're trying to convey something that is um, too visceral of a feeling to speak out, and I feel like for me, music is one of the very few things that lets me feel those things, even if it's not in plain English or whatever native language. And I think for me, and I've always been curious about different kinds of music. I've always seen myself as someone who's always learning and always exploring new kinds of music to see what other kinds of emotions I can feel, even if it's from cultures and from that I quite don't understand yet, and that I still want to learn about. And which is why I kind of been drawn into the weirder stuff of music and the more kind of odd stuff. But to me, those are all emotions that people feel and that they want to communicate. And I feel like it's my duty to feel those things as well, even if other people don't quite understand that. But to me, that's okay. But yeah, to me, that's what music, means to me anyway.
I like all the answers. They were just all amazing. Um, so our closing remarks are simply thank you so much for coming to listen in on this. And thank you to the panelists for talking. Thank you for sharing your experience and being open enough to let us know what it's like once we get out of college from various different points and times of that experience. I speak for everyone. I say we really appreciate it, and we really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to come do this. And Mary wants to say something, Professor Mary Au.
Yes, Karen. Karen Lopez is one of our attendees, and she's also one of our alums. She brought some of her students. Can you introduce them, Karen?
Hi, good afternoon.
Please.
I'm Karen Lopez at Rancho Dominguez Prep. David, we've been emailing back and forth for the last 2 years. I'm glad I'm finally able to put a face to the name. So we're at Rancho Dominguez. For those of you at Rancho that don't know, David and the MUFI organization has been giving us grants for the last, I think, 3 years, I believe. The first one we got from them, we were able to help start our mariachi program at Rancho Dominguez. And then the second one, which I think we got right when COVID hit, we were able to buy a bunch of music that we still haven't used, but it's okay. We'll put it to good use, I promise. And then this one we just got a few weeks ago. We haven't spent yet, but we will. We promise. And if you want to give us more money, we'll spend that too. I'm just kidding. So yeah, I have some of my students here. We were in our class and we decided to come over and take a virtual field trip. So thank you guys so much for allowing us to come in here and listen to your story, even if it was just the tail end of it.
Can we take a photo later on with everyone again, including your students?
Sure. David, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think, we're maybe running over time, but we mentioned the word grants. And I want to say there are grants and scholarships and philanthropic organizations that want to help music students. And once again, you got to know that you're available. They want to know that you're available. You have to search for these things. You have to apply for them. You're never going to get a scholarship unless you apply for them. If you're looking at the chats, I mentioned um, new Phi scholarships at Dominguez Hills. There should be some offered this spring. I don't know if there are, but there should be. I know the Palos Verdes South Bay alumni chapter is offering scholarships, and you should already be aware of the scholarship application and announcement. If not, talk to your president. She should have received something from me or from the chapter. And there, if you start searching online for grants in music studies, you'll find hundreds, if not thousands, of possible grants. I once had a student at Dominguez Hills who kind of made this his career. He spent 4 years at Dominguez Hills spending hours and hours applying for grants, and he got tons of money. All you have to do is ask sometime and let people know that you're studying music and that you have some talent and you'd like some support. There is support out there, so ask for it and go about it. The International Mu Phi Epsilon and the Mu Phi Epsilon Foundation offers scholarships and grants, studies in Europe, studies in Aspen, Colorado. You got to apply for most of those by March 1st, so you probably missed this year unless you already applied, but put it on your calendar next February or so. Get ready to apply for a Mu Phi Epsilon grant or scholarship because they are available. And once again, I served as judge for some of those grants in the past, and sometimes I found that one person applied for the grants, and it was very easy to decide who was going to get the money. So apply, look for grants.
Thank
Okay,
you,
I'm sorry.
David.
Sorry to take you over time.
Thank you, David. I'd just like to say thank you to David personally and the MUFI chapter and PV because they've helped our Gamma Sigma chapter so much financially by supplying us with scholarships for new initiate members. And me and him have been in close contact trying to make that work out. And thank you so much for just helping us.
Yes, thank you, David and the PV chapter. We went from, is it 7 to 28 now?
We went from 7 members last year to now 29.
29.
Yes.
Yep.
In 1 year.
In 1 year. Yeah. It's been amazing.
This is amazing.
Yeah. So once again, thank you for all the support. And like I said, we're going to wrap up here. So anybody that wants to see this, or if you want to send this to anybody, we will be posting it on a YouTube channel. So, and we'll also make Instagram posts about it and send out any emails. So anybody that you want to send this to that you think would benefit from this or anything like that, or if you guys just want to watch this whole thing all over again, be on the lookout for when that happens. But yeah, thank you. Anything else,
Now,
Janelle?
can you pick the photo?
Yes, I can take
one of you. So how do you get everyone on?
Oh, we got to unspotlight, don't we?
Huh?
I believe you have to unpin everyone.
I'm on gallery now.
For the students that want to turn on their cameras for Rancho, just make sure if you turn on your camera, you have submitted a media release form. If you have not or you're unsure, don't turn your camera on, please.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and take the photo. 1, 2, 3. And another one. 1, 2, 3. Great. Okay, I got them. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. We hope you learned and was able to absorb some things from our amazing and experienced musicians. And yeah, thank you so much on the behalf of the Gamma Sigma chapter. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming.